Okay, so now the last part of finishing your zipper, once you've stay stitched both sides in, you're actually going to go through and attach both of those seams to your seam that you already closed down here. So I am going to pin my zipper and all this fabric out to the side just like this, just to make sure that I don't stitch over anything I'm not supposed to. And I still have my zipper foot on, so you'll use the invisible zipper foot to do this too. And I'm going to move the foot over because I need this other side. So all of this should be, if you were sewing the zipper, you are stitching right here next to this, so you want the foot to be holding the right side. So let me just get this in here. Okay, and then I'm going to go right before where I stopped, which is about right here. I can see that's where my seam starts to venture sort of to the right here, and I'm going to stay stitch that. So this is just a regular stay stitch, just with the zipper foot. Stitch it a little. Back stitch it. Go ahead and back stitch that one a little bit more because it is the bottom of your zipper and it will take a lot of pull and tug, so it's okay to make that seam a little bit stronger. And then just keep stitching until you run into the previous seam that you had already made. Okay? And then back stitch that. Okay? So now your zipper is done. Now what I'm going to do is go through and trim off all these little extra bits because I don't want them to get stuck in my zipper. And one more thing that you'll want to do is turn this inside out now that it's done. Close your zipper up and then pull the fabric apart just gently, just slightly, and then press that down, because from then on whenever you go to zip your dress you'll be less likely to catch your fabric. So basically now that you've finished your zipper, you're going to re-press the zipper to the original form that it was before we pressed it open. Hi again guys! First of all, if you're still here, congratulations. You stuck it out and you hung in there. So good job, you just finished everything that you had to do for the right side of the fabric and basically the exterior body of your dress. Now what you need to do that I'm not going to cover, you need to do all of the same things that you just did for the right side of the fabric for your lining pieces. So come back after you've finished the lining pieces and we'll continue with the next part. The only thing that will be different is you won't have to deal with the shoulder straps, and you also won't be putting in the invisible zipper. So finish that, come back, and we'll finish our dresses together. Okay, I wasn't planning to continue working on this so late, but since it's 5 a.m. and I can't fall asleep, here we are again. So I finished the lining already, and I have my markings on the inside for where the boning is supposed to stop. So you should have markings on the inside of your lining, like so. There's mine. If you can't find yours, try flipping over your seam to see if the marking is on the inside. I made mine afterwards because I like to do them like this because they're easier to see. But if you did yours on the wrong side of the fabric, which is what you're supposed to do before you cut, then yours will probably be there. So just find where that is, and if you want to, you can remark it on the outside. Now, one more thing that I do, I just use my measuring tape because it's roughly 5/8, and then I leave myself little markings so that I'll know where to stop. Basically, you're letting yourself know where the seam is going to be when you close it up, because you don't want your boning to go past that point. So I will mark all of mine. maybe. To the other side. Okay, so that takes care of marking where my seam allowance will be. The next thing I'm going to do is take my boning and I'm going to make sure that the fabric is even with my plastic here. Let me just trim that off really quick. Also, when you're cutting your boning, hopefully I shouldn't have to say this, but just in case, make sure you're using your cheap scissors. Don't use your nice fabric scissors to cut plastic, okay? So you're going to lay down your seam flat, and you have your marking for where your boning should end, and the marking of where your seam allowance is going to be. And you're going to cut your boning to fit inside those two marks. Whoa. Preferably without throwing the scissors. And then also when you're laying them out, try to find some way to lay them in order so that you don't get confused. And I am actually going to measure all of mine and cut them like that, but another thing that you can do if you really want yours to be exactly the same is you can just pair up each seam with the one that you've already cut and then just cut it to the same length. I like to do each of mine individually because I find that after I fit things, sometimes I'll have one seam that's a little bit different than another, so I prefer to do mine one at a time. Oh, I'm so sleepy. I'm happy, but I'm sleepy. I couldn't sleep because trucks were going by in the middle of the night here on Broadway. The one bad thing about living in a cool area of New York. I never hurt for anything to do on Broadway, but yeah, it is noisy. On these ones that go over the bust, make sure that you actually push the fabric out so that you can see how much you actually need. If you just lay it flat, you're not going to get the curvature of the bust there. So make sure you do that. Okay, now I'm going to take these and I'm going to move them in order that I cut them and move them to the side so that I know what order they go in. Alright, and then I will continue with the other side. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yes, so I still need to do the center. Okay. Here's my center piece. And then we have another bust piece, so make sure that you push the fabric out. Okay. And I'm just continuing to line these up over here in the order that they go in. Oh, this one my marking isn't very clear, so I'm going to remark that one. Okay. Set my boning aside. This is a good time to count your seams and then to count your boning to make sure that they match up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Go over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 bones for 11 seams. Perfect. Okay, now I'm going to move that aside. So these are all of my boning pieces. And I've kept them all in order. Now the next thing that we want to do, you don't necessarily have to do this, but it's kind of considered best practice. These can be quite sharp, and it's usually something that you should do, at least round the edges with your scissors. That way whenever it hits the seam, when it's under stress, it won't put a hole through your garment. People do these different ways. Some people just trim them. Have a really fun time afterwards trying to find all your pieces. Something else you can do if you don't like this method is a lot of people will also melt them. So you can hold a lighter. Sometimes I do it over a candle because I'm not very good with a lighter. And you can just melt this, and once it cools down just a little bit, you can push it with your fingers into the rounded shape. For this particular project, I'm just going to cut mine in a round shape. And it doesn't have to be perfect, just enough to take some of the strain off the seam. And you'll get better at this as you do it. Make sure you don't have any pointy edges. I'll probably double check these before I start sewing with them. Because I'm so sleepy, I want to make sure that I haven't skipped the bottom of any of them. I do that sometimes when I get into a project too late in the evening or too early in the morning. I definitely don't want any of these little guys puncturing a hole in what I feel like is going to be a very cute dress. That's a bit sharp. Better. Light at the end of the tunnel, almost done. Okay, this would be a good time to check all of your pieces to make sure that you didn't miss anything. Now it looks good. Looks good. Oh, see that? There's one. Missed one right there. That is why it is always worth double checking. I find that I usually miss one. Whoop. Did I have that here? Yes, I did. Okay. When in doubt and you get lost in your boning, just go from longest to shortest. That's good. Good. All right. So let me grab the instructions so I can tell you what step we're on now. So all of that with the boning, that was 11, preparing the boning. Now 12, pin casing with boning to wrong side of lining. So this is your wrong side of your lining. Basically the side that has all those unfinished nasty edges. And you're going to put them right over the seams, having upper raw edges even, and stitch close to long edges and across casings at small circles as shown. Okay, so I'm going to set my boning pieces aside in order because that's going to be easier for me. And then you're going to start on whichever side you want to. And basically you are going to stitch right in this. They give you two seams on each side, so you're going to be stitching right on those. And try not to fight your boning. Go in the direction of your boning. So basically when I put this on, this will be the lining inside of the dress. So it's actually the right side of my fabric over here that would be curved outwards. This is going to be curved in like this over the bust. Make sense? So if you're just looking at this and you're thinking dress, you would think that this would go in like that, but that's actually going to fight the look of your right-sided fabric. So this is your lining. Your lining is going to be covering the bust like that. So instead of putting it in like this, which you would have with the right fabric, you want to put it here so it follows the natural shape. So curvature should match the curvature of the body. So this one's going to go right here. I'm going to set up my machine, and I mean, I guess you could pin this if you wanted to, but I think that would actually make it a lot harder. I would just hold it there and I would just follow along as you go with your just freehand. Alright? So I'm going to set my pieces aside in order and get this going. Use all my fingers. That's how I usually... Oh, there we go. Keeping them all in order. Alright, so let's do one of these together. This is my lining, boning, and remember you're sewing the boning in to keep the shape of this lining, which is going to be tucked inwards. So that means my boning needs to go like this. So this is my seam, boning needs to curve in like this. And I'm going to make sure that I start it at the top here. And because you trimmed down your sides, you should have just this tiny little bit of fabric up here that's bendable. So you're going to sew right across that to encase your boning. Then you're going to travel down here. You're going to encase the bottom, which is also trimmed, and you're going to come back up all in one stitch. And don't worry too much if at some point you hear yourself with your machine go through your boning. I've done it before. It didn't tear up my machine or anything. It happens every now and then. Okay, that's my top part. Take your time to lay it flat over the seam how you need it, and then just travel down that line. And I usually backstitch these quite a bit just to give them some extra strength. You don't have to do that, but I would recommend it. Just keeping it right on top of that seam. And just because boning sometimes moves around, don't be afraid to get in there and give it a little push if it starts to get close to the end. I'm going to take this one down just a little bit further. Alright. Ah, see that? That was a bit of boning that I grabbed. But as you can see, the machine handles it just fine. Sorry, you probably can't see anything there. I'm basically just following that other line straight down. Alright, and then do some back stitching. Okay, so I had already done the first one. That was this one. Here's my second one. And I'm just going to keep doing that for each one of these, making sure that I continue to go in that order that I laid out for myself. Okay, I'm going to do one more with you, and then I'm going to let you do them on your own. So, once again, hopefully you should have enough in at this point that you can figure out without having to turn it each time which way the boning has to be turned. So you can see these two are already turned that way, so this one obviously needs to go like this. Oh, and don't worry if you have some seams like this. You can see here, this is where I did my fitting, so that's okay. You're just going to be trimming this basically before we do our final seam up top here. I will trim this so that it's a bit more even. So lay it roughly where it needs to go. So over the top first, just to keep that casing sealed up. Alright, and before you start, make sure you're centered over your seam properly. This one's a bit tricky. All right. Feel if your boning needs to be pushed up. Mine's all right. And then I'm just going to follow that other seam straight down. Back stitch a little. Can you see that? And there you have 3. Okay, so do all of your seams that same way, and then come back.